A gnome.
Where?
There's a gnome.
Okay. I'm not here to see a gnome.
No.
Carmelite fathers.
No, they believe in the Prophet Muhammad. But it's really a secret. Yeah.
No idea who this guy is.
You have to actually be born into it. It's a large family.
Yeah, it's like a monastery.
That was a monastery. A garden?
No. Like a.
Okay, so we continue the story, the biblical story of Elijah. And here is the time of King Ahab. So this goes to the lineage of the kings of Israel. Now Ahab married one woman. She is from Lebanon. She is a Phoenician, okay? Her name is Jezebel. And Jezebel scares Elijah. He is so scared of her that he is running away into desert. Elijah, she's bringing with her all her idol worshipping from Lebanon, from the Phoenician culture. And once she is visiting her daddy in Lebanon, okay, Elijah is using that opportunity to show who the real God of Israel is. Elijah is criticizing Ahab for marrying that woman. He didn't say a word against Solomon, that had so many wives and concubines. But anyway, Ahab is the king of Israel, and here comes the prophet. And there's a beautiful description in the book of Kings about their conversations and everything. So finally, Elijah says, you know what? She's absent. Let me show you who the real God is. So they are building two altars. He said, I will build an altar. You will build an altar. I'll pray to God. You will pray to God. And this is like a competition between the kids, that whose father is bigger, stronger, mighty, and so on and so on. And finally, you can see that they are using the two big forces in nature, fire and water, in order to prove who the real God is. Okay, Pastor, that's your pulpit.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to. Let's go back to the two kingdoms. So you have David and Solomon and Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. So when he takes power, one of the things he does is he overtaxes the people, because he listens to young counselors instead of the men of wisdom. So one of David's generals was a man by the name of Jeroboam. So Rehoboam and Jeroboam. So when Rehoboam does that, 10 of the tribes, because remember the nation of Israel was a tribal nation. So it was 12 tribes coming together. It was an alliance. David actually put that alliance together, and then Solomon reinforced it. But it was still an alliance. It was kind of like a united tribe. So the 10 tribes, when they were overtaxed, under Jeroboam, they broke away. And that began what is called the Northern Kingdom. And as Yael said, the Southern Kingdom was Judah, and the 10 tribes were the Northern Kingdom. So we're talking here about Ahab. Ahab was part of the Northern Kingdom. The Northern Kingdom lasted, from the time of that split, the Northern Kingdom lasted 250 years, and then they were taken into captivity. There were 19 kings in that Northern Kingdom, and they came from 10 different families. Right? There was no succession. There was no monarchy of passing it to the son. There was a lot of political intrigue, and not one of the kings of the northern tribes, they were all evil. The southern kingdom had 20 kings. one family, the family of David. And they had 5, possibly 6 good kings. But the idea, one of the things you guys should see, because as you're looking at the Old Testament, don't just see it from a historical standpoint. God is showing, He's teaching us giant lessons here. And the spiritual lesson behind this is that the line of David represents the line who are led by the Spirit. You know, they are seeking out, this is why David is called a man after God's own heart. So even when he sins, right, he goes to the Lord in prayer and he says, restore unto me the joy of my salvation. Don't take your spirit from me. So David represents, and his line represents, even when they do evil, people that are seeking after God, that know that the Spirit of God is needed for them to live their lives. The northern kingdom represents all the people who live by the flesh. You know, they live by their own strength, they live by their own power, they live, you know, by deciding what they think is right and wrong. That's the curse of Genesis 3, is that as humanity we've been cursed with trying to figure out what we think is right and wrong, as opposed to being led by God. So Ahab is in that line. His father was a man by the name of Omri. In the ancient world, Omri was revered. He's the one that establishes this northern dynasty to a place that had never been before. What I always point out is Omri's just a footnote, you know, in the bibliography of heaven. He's powerful here. He's just a footnote in heaven. So he's the one that insists. He's trying to create this alliance to keep his kingdom going. And he's the one that sets up his son Ahab to marry Jezebel. So one of the things that God does, this was an agricultural land at that time. So what is needed for a good harvest, a good crop? Rain, right? You can plant the crop, you can till the soil, but you can't make it rain. So the people that used to occupy the land of Israel were the Canaanite tribes. And one of the chief gods of the Canaanite tribes was Baal. And his wife was named Asherah. So what God did, what did he do? He struck the northern kingdom with a drought. And actually the book of James says the drought lasted for 3.5 years.
Yep.
Right? And what was he doing? He was showing that he was God, and if he made it stop raining, it would stop raining. And all the prophets, you know, because Jezebel, being a Phoenician and a pagan, she was having all the prophets of Israel killed. And Elijah was this one that they were always after. Remember the widow of Zarephath? He went and hid out with the widow of Zarephath. The widow of Zarephath took care of him. But now God told him to come back to the land. So he comes back, and essentially he meets Ahab. An interesting story. I'm not going to get into all the details, but he meets Ahab, and he sets up this contest. And basically he says, you know, let's just see who is God. You want rain? You know, let's see who will actually burn up these sacrifices. So he gets the prophets of Baal together, and there are 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of Asherah. He gets them all together, and he says, you prepare your sacrifice. They prepare their sacrifice. They put it on the altar. And the scripture says from morning to evening, they cried out to Baal and Asherah. And at noon, he was kind of feeling his oats, you know, because he saw that clearly they were getting frantic and crazy. And he says, maybe you should call out to him louder. Maybe he can't hear you because maybe he's meditating. Maybe he's going to the bathroom. Maybe he's on a journey.
Maybe he's asleep.
Maybe he's
Sleep,
asleep,
yeah.
right?
Time.
Right. So they start cutting themselves because these are supposed the prophets of Baal. They're calling out for fire to come down and destroy the sacrifice. So evening comes, the time of the evening sacrifice, it says, and so Elijah, just to show the superiority of God, there were underground springs. One of the reasons we're here, and he has 3 barrels essentially of water, and he says, pour it over the sacrifice. And they do it once. He says, do it again. They do it again. He says, do it again. So 3 times, and the scripture says the water ran so much over the sacrifice that it ran into the trenches. And then he calls out to God, and he says, Lord, show that you are the God of heaven and that I am your prophet. And immediately fire comes down, and all the water's gone, and the sacrifice is taken as well. Then he tells the people, kill all the prophets of Baal. And they do. Now, what happens is, he's been doing this all day. People say, what's the psychological reason he was so easily taken by Jezebel? One of the things we call it is the Elijah syndrome, is that whenever you've done something great, you're like worn out, and you're at your weakest. And so here he's beaten all these prophets, but a woman comes and says, you know what? By the end of the day, my friend, your head's going to be on a stick. And so he runs away. And now he's exhausted, and God comes to him. And God, what's wonderful is God is very gentle with Elijah and the way he deals with him. So that's the contest here of Elijah and the prophets of Baal. So you'll see as we look out. I hope you're going to tell your story about Yael too, right?
Wait a minute.
I'm not going to.
Have patience.
Okay. I just want to make sure you're going to tell your story.
Up in Megiddo.
Okay.
Megiddo,
Okay.
where we see the whole scenery.
Okay.
So the place here is called Muhaka, and in Arabic and in Hebrew it's the place Machrecha. It's the place of fire. Okay, it's the name of the place of the fire. So we have here that wonderful story. We are at the edge of Mt Carmel. Now we're going to climb up on the balcony, and you will have this bird view as if you are flying over Jezreel Valley. You can't believe how beautiful it looks from the top. So let's go.